Yes, recorded it. Yes, it is. Well, great afternoon, great evening, great morning. It really doesn't matter because I'm filming this or recording this in the afternoon, and you are here watching it whenever. But this is Tune In Tuesday. It is. It's Tune In Tuesday, even though we're recording on Thursday. I'm not even going to pretend. But you guys know that this is what we're doing over the next couple of Tuesdays. It's great training. It is the opportunity to get somebody else's perspective and see if the information that we're sharing really works for you. And sometimes we love inside voices. You guys know I post stuff all the time from some of the top people in Mary Kay. I post from myself. In fact, you're going to be able to see a lot of that. But I also love to bring you people outside voices. I think you need to remember that this is a business and there are business tips and tools that you can take from anybody that's been in business. And having said that, I want to introduce you to Brian Harding, who is an amazing man on so many levels. I met Brian, oh my gosh, I'm going to say 4 years ago, maybe five,
That's, I
because it
think
was
it's
before.
four.
Yeah, because it was before we shut down everything. So I that is a marker. I can at least mark it based on that. But anyway, what I have appreciated about Brian is he is a business coach. And I know some of the businesses that and people, business owners that he has coached and the difference that he has made for them. He has coached me out of the generosity of his heart and his kindness. What I appreciate in that conversation is the fact that he was a business owner. I'll tell you guys, it drives me insane when I have somebody that I know take some business coaching class and all of a sudden you're a business coach, or you've been in my business or a similar business. It didn't necessarily fly the way you thought it should. So then you go and find business coaching and come back as a business coach. I don't get that at all. Be successful in your area, then come coach me. But that's another story. I'm way off on tangent. But Brian took a business from scratch, built that business, went through all the things that you need to do to build a successful business, a multi-billion. There you go, Brian. I'm giving you billions. It was millions, but
Yeah,
you'll
well,
take it.
you're foreshadowing for me. I like it.
I know for what you do now. Anyway, he took that business, $1 million, multi-million dollar business, 54 employees. For those of you who say to yourself, I don't think I can team build because it's a struggle. Let me tell you something. Whether it's an all volunteer army or it's an employee army, they're not easy to deal with. It is one of his strengths, what he brings to the table in building a cohesive team. He did with this company. And then he was able to supposedly retire. And what he realized is his gift, his calling, and his purpose is to invest in other business owners so that they too can achieve that kind of success and still enjoy what they do. And so, Brian, I'm so excited that you're here. You really did make a difference. I would love for you to chat a little bit about what I learned from you and then whatever you've watched me. So, I'm going to turn it over to you and
Well,
then
I'm
fill
gonna
in.
I'm gonna back up and I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, which is all the trials and tribulations that come along with leading people and managing people. And you said something like, "That's Brian's gift." I want to tell you about how it started. I would make the case that I'm above average in my skill set on that front now, but I was not born gifted in that area at all. I'll tell you my first leap into a leadership role. I was my first real career out of high school. I didn't go to college. I've never been even in a college classroom. It wasn't for me. My first real career was in the steel industry, and I was a teamster. And you had to know somebody to get this job. Like I was a crane operator and a big machine operator. We took giant pieces of steel from the mill and we cut them down to smaller pieces of steel and we sold them to people who build things and whatever. Um, After I'd been in the union about 5 years, I left and got into a leadership role. And so I was 24 years old and I was leading men who were early 40s to mid 60s. These are like Alaska pipeline guys. This is in the Seattle Tacoma area. You can say it was a pretty rough and tumble group. They did not have any problem settling issues in the parking lot, even with their 24-year-old supervisor. And at 24 years old, I was a perfect storm of a disastrous leader. I had zero skills in leadership and I had a tremendous ego. And that recipe was a disaster. Lucky for me, I happened to have, there was three men who mentored me, who cared about me enough, loved me enough, held me accountable enough, believed in me enough, all the stuff. And because I was an employee, I didn't have a choice. I had to do the things that they told me to do. And I didn't want to be poor. I grew up really poor. I don't have the picture right here nearby. I have a picture I keep in my office um, that shows when I was 10 years old. It was my mom drove a 72 Cutlass Supreme that was like all rusted, and like we lived in trailers and apartments my whole life and never in the good part of town. Anyhow, I didn't want to be poor. And I believe that a path out of being poor was to get better at leadership. And I had these mentors there, and I was an employee, and I didn't have a choice. So they taught me real world practical skills for leadership. And because I didn't have a choice, I did what they told me to. And what do you know? I got better. So my point with that is, I don't believe any of us are gifted at anything. We're none of us are gifted at everything. We all have certain gifts, but in business, there's sales, there's leadership, there's these different components. It's exceedingly unlikely anybody process improvement, all this kind of stuff. It's exceedingly unlikely anybody's born gifted at all those things. However, there's certain vital parts of running a business that we need to do what we can. And I would say leadership is one of those things. People skills, mentoring, whatever that means for you. Um, long-winded way of saying you can learn this stuff. I promise you. I was a disaster. I was horrible in leading people when I first started. And now I would agree that that's one of my stronger skill sets. But I don't want it to be perceived as like I was just born this way. That is not how it was at all.
So let me just say this to that point. When I was in junior high and then I moved to high school, I was in FFA. And FFA has a number of platforms for you to be a speaker. And the first one is what you call the creed, and you memorize the creed and you do all different levels up through the state to the national. I got through the chapter, I got to the district, and I just froze. I mean, froze. What should take you 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 if you're really extravagant, right? And I just, oh my gosh, I was terrible, terrible. I got better at structured public speaking because I did it all the time because of that. So I had the speeches, I did the speeches, but it was always structured. What absolutely scared me to death was expert, why can't I think of the word? Extemporaneous. See, I can't even say it.
Extemporaneous?
Yes. Speaking, it absolutely petrified me. It petrified me. I watched people do it. In FFA, you grabbed a subject, you had 15 minutes to come up with a speech, and you went out and they could ask you questions. Best thing I ever learned was from somebody who did it and was excellent at it, to find out she lied on most of the questions. Now, Google would make that much more difficult now, but back then her response was, they don't know if Newsweek from whatever actually had that in it. You can say whatever you want to. And I'm
Right.
like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. I thought you had to have all this knowledge. I say that to say now it is probably one of my greatest strengths. Well, I can't even say the word even now.
Extemporaneous. Yeah.
Extemporaneous, but I would tell
It's like
you,
a $14 word. You got to give yourself some grace not be able to say that. We
after I
don't
get
have that
off
one
this
ready to go all
call,
the
I'll be
time.
able to say it just fine. But I'm just saying, I practiced it because I got booted my last round in FFA. My last round in FFA, for whatever reason, I couldn't. Oh, my ag teacher was brand new, did not send my speech in time because you had to send the hard copy in ahead of time. She did not get in by dates. They had no grace. So the only thing I could do was the extemporaneous. That's the only thing I could do. And I did it. And from there, I do it all the time. And because of that, I would agree with you. I have people say to me all the time, "Oh, I can't be like you because you're so whatever." And my response is, "No, I just have done it so often and I've invested in what it takes to do it." So I agree with you. A lot of times what seems like gifts are really a skill set that you just practice over and over again until it becomes second nature.
Yeah. And I think, for what you got in Mary Kay and that organization, I don't know for sure, but I gotta imagine leadership, mentorship, that kind of stuff is a absolutely critical part of it. And I would just say that even if you don't feel like you're a born gifted leader, which again, I don't know very many people who are actually good leaders who were also born gifted leaders. Plenty of bad leaders who think they were born gifted at it, but people who were actually good at it who were also born gifted in that arena. I don't know if that's a large share of the people who are actually good leaders. I think most of it is just finding a handful of practical frameworks to follow, or principles or guidelines or standards to follow that you adhere to and you stick to and you just get the reps in. I tell my clients all the time, the only thing I have over clients who are in the beginning of this is I just have reps. I just have 25 years of reps of doing the same thing over and over again. Um, people are people. Everything always feels like it's a unique situation, but it's honestly, once you kind of get some fundamentals down, it's kind of just the same thing over and over again.
So you just gave me the opportunity to share something with consultants specifically because they're going to be watching this. I will say this. Best compliment ever was in this last couple days when we're planning a trip to DC and we 11 people, 4 children, all of us trying to figure out what we're going to go see and not see together. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we have gotten into the 2 week window, and one of the places has a great discount for groups. And so when we were doing all of this, I said, "Well, I'll call them tomorrow and see if there's any reason why I can't go ahead and get the discount." And so my husband and I were driving and we were talking about something else, and he literally quoted to me, "I know you're going to ask them if there's any reason why you can't get what," I don't even remember what we were after. And I went, "Oh my gosh, I really do say this all the time." And I tell my consultants to say that all the time. This is how I ask people if there's any reason why we can't get together. Is there any reason why? Are those words original to me? Not in a million years. In fact, for many years when I started Mary Kay, I'm like, "I'm not asking people that way. That's not really me. I would never talk to them that way." But if I really wanted to get good at what I do, I needed to practice the language that I was taught by people who had done it so many times and were great at it. And so
Yeah.
now it is a natural part of my vocabulary. Is there any reason why? I ask people that all the time. To your point, Brian, it is people said practice makes perfect. No, actually, perfect practice makes perfect, and repetition is your friend. And so, to your point, yeah, it's not that you have a toolkit this huge, it's that you have a toolkit this huge, but you actually use the tools that are in the kit and you
Yeah.
practice it over and over again. Brilliant. I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you. I'm
So
writing it
let's
down.
talk a little bit about a couple of things that happen in a more traditional, like brick and mortar style business. Our company was plumbing. We did service plumbing, not new construction. So we go out and fix things that broke. Um, but there's some similar dynamics between that and your business. I'll just tell you one of them. When we first started out, we started out in 2011, and I remember there was when we made the announcement, there was a lot of like, "Yeah, you're gonna go get him, like stick it to the man." There was like this whole kind of cheering section we had, um, and that evaporated in about 2 weeks, I would say. And then there was zero fanfare for me until I sold in 2021, and then there was lots of fanfare again. But in the middle of that 10 years, there was nothing. There was nobody cheering for me. There was, I mean, I don't mean nobody. Like my mom was obviously pulling for me, my wife was pulling for me, but there was nobody like I didn't have any cheerleaders. It was just at the beginning when I made the announcement and just at the end and all that distance in the middle, it was me. And I had to be the one to drive it. I would imagine that that's pretty universal for any business. Another thing I would say about, just kind of business fundamentals that are probably apples to apples. I am a sincere believer that a sign, an indicator of the maturity of a company is who you can say no to. So let me give you some examples of what I mean by that. Let's say you start an HVAC company in Phoenix, right? You've been in the HVAC industry for 10 years and you have all the technical skills you need, and now you're going to go start your own business. Well, in the beginning, you ain't got no money. So anybody who you might know or anybody is your client. Anybody who has an HVAC problem and has a pulse and a credit card that'll go through, that's your client. And that's just how it is in the beginning. You don't have a choice. But when you fast forward 10 years, after that 10 years, you figured out, well, actually, we work with these kind of people better. We're expert, we're more, here's our niche and whatever. And our ability to say no to everyone who is not that, in my opinion, is an indicator of the maturity of the company. On the employee side, same thing happens. In the beginning, you got no track record, you got no stability, you got no safety net, you have no 401k, you have nothing. So the people that you hire in the beginning, again, is kind of your standards cannot be what they are if you're a 40-year-old corporation or whatever, and you have all that stability and you have, quite frankly, more to offer an employee. So in the beginning, your employees, you hire whoever says yes. And then eventually the company matures and you can get more selective and you can say no to other things. Now it's not just about customers and employees though. Um, Saying no to doing fun things on Friday night is something that you have to do as your now in the beginning. Again, you can be loosey goosey about that stuff. And if we're treating our business as a hobby and not a business, then you might not say no to that thing on Friday night. You might not work on the Saturday. You know you should be working to get your invoicing done, your orders in, or whatever it is, right? Um, all of those things that we say no to, in my opinion, are indicators of the maturity of the company. And I think that's pretty apples to apples across all kinds of industries, including your Mary Kay consultants. That if we can't say no to anything, well, we're treating this like a hobby and not a business. And the last corollary would be when we started our company. I mean, I was making really good money before we started our company. We started our company and I'm making no money. We had 3 full-time employees getting regular paychecks every 2 weeks, and I was not getting any money. And I was working well over 100 hours a week. So, one of the things that people talk about in the business journey is work-life balance, right? If you were to look at my work-life balance that first 2 years, where I was not making anywhere near what I was as an employee and working twice as many hours, if you looked at that 2 year window and said, well, what's your work-life balance like, Brian? It wasn't great at all. It was most logical people would say, "What the heck are you doing? Stop doing that. Like, go get a job and have a life again." And if you look at the last 3 years of my business ownership journey, I went to the office 3 days a week. I probably worked 15, 20 hours a week, had a leadership team that ran the whole thing. I maintained some key client relationships and things like that. I had responsibilities here and there, but my work-life balance at the end, working 3 days a week, making more money than I ever made my entire life, is pretty awesome, right? And if you look at the whole 10-year cycle, the whole 10-year period, it was reasonably in balance. One of the things I think that gets people off on the wrong track is they're assessing this work-life balance on very short time horizons. And I would encourage people to look at the longer time horizon to make that assessment of what's a proper or fair or adequate work-life balance. It's going to change. And if you're looking at if you look at my first, let's say the after the first year, from months 12 to 16, I was making like hardly anything in dollars. And I was working a tremendous amount of hours and I had a tremendous amount of stress. But ultimately it paid off. But we can't, if we get siloed like, well, my work-life balance right now, this week or this month is not good. I think we can get off on the wrong track a little bit. So those are some of the things that I think in like just general business stuff that I think are kind of apples to apples for your consultants as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna work backwards because I'm gonna go to the work-life balance part. I always find it fascinating when I listen to top people talk about they should have had better work-life balance, or you should have work-life balance, or whatever the conversation is. And I always think to myself, it's easy for you to say that now. You already went through the process. You're coaching me from a finished standpoint, not a beginning standpoint, or even in the middle standpoint. And it sounds really good, but the bottom line is, if you want something to work, Mary Kay always gave us the example of, and nobody does it anymore, but an actual water pump, an actual, right? You can find them still if you go out into nature and go to, at least in New Mexico. In New Mexico, in some of the national parks, that's how you got your water. They didn't have water stations. You pumped that sucker till the water came out. And so Mary Kay used to talk all the time about the fact that if you get it cranking and you really get it going, then you only need a couple times to do it, and then the water keeps coming. But if you crank it really hard and you get the water coming and then you quit, and you come back and you think, where's the water? And then you have to crank it really hard and then you quit. And then you come back. That you are, in fact, creating the situation because you're not willing to stick with it through the hard cranks, through the hard pumping, till the water, and then continue to do that for the flow because eventually it stops if you're not willing and you're doing this. And I had a lot of that in the beginning of my business. I did. I had tons of what we call Zoomikers. I'd work really hard and then I'd think to myself, I've earned this. I'm taking off. And then I'd look at my stuff and go, huh. And I will say in the last couple of years, I have noticed the same thing for different reasons, but I am really aware that I took my foot off the pedal at a time that I should not have taken my foot off the pedal. And when we say that, and I'll say it to this, we say in business that you can maintain. And my reaction is you cannot maintain. You can either grow and you can support that growth, whether it's a lot or a little, or you eventually start diminishing. But there is nothing in life where it's the status quo. Status quo
Yeah.
for me does not exist.
We had a mantra in our company that there's no such thing as going an hour a day, a week, or a month or a year and staying the same. Every moment, every day, every week, every month, every quarter, whatever, we're either growing or shrinking. It is a very binary thing. It's exceedingly difficult to just maintain, like you're saying. When we're maintaining, we're shrinking. We just don't see it yet. The consequences haven't manifested yet, but they are there.
I totally
um,
agree. So thank you for bringing that piece up. So this is what I heard Brian say, and I'm just going to kind of reiterate it within our business. Number one, um, Mary Kay does foster the thought of God first, family second, and career third. What I find a lot of consultants do is they latch on to the God first and family second, and their business is not third. Their business is 33rd. And they have all these reasons why they cancel things or won't schedule things or rearrange things or don't stick with things. And my reaction now is to say to you, if you have this business and it is a business, there are a lot of you that this is not a business for you. You take advantage of the discounts, you love the discounts, you love the product, you got two or three other people in your pocket, they're helping you pay that, and that's beautiful. But if you're evaluating this as a business, then you set your schedule. I can look at your calendar and tell you whether or not you have a business. I can tell you you have a business based on how you have things lined out and what that looks like. And this business, is it's providing for you, then that means you don't get to always do every family activity. And guys, that's really hard on me. If you know what I value and how hard I work for that family to stay cohesive, I catch myself and then when I do make that choice, I'm aware of the cost. I'm
yeah.
aware of the cost. But I'm just letting you know, God first, family second, career third. Yes, Mary Kay absolutely subscribed to that. And she built a globally billion-dollar business based on the fact that what she was providing for her family was her gift to her family. And she was willing to pay the price beginning. Number two,
Real
that you
quick on
come,
that, on Donna, let me ask you a question. I don't know this because I'm not a woman, I'm not a Mary Kay consultant, but I got to imagine somewhere in your organization there is a woman who wants to build this business and her husband is just like, yeah, whatever. Like he's not supporting. Is that a real world scenario?
oh, it's an
Okay.
absolute reward
Okay,
center.
so based on the God first, family second, business third, well, that now we can get confusion, right? Well, what am I supposed to do? My husband's not supporting me. He's not on board. He thinks I'm wasting my time. Whatever it is, right? Um, again, the same things happen in more traditional businesses, and I'm guessing most of your people in your organization have been employees before, right? Of more traditional companies, right?
Mhm.
So everyone can relate to this. The boss comes in and says, "I read a book last month. We got this brilliant new idea how we're going to do things," and they're gung ho, and everyone's going to be drugged through a knot hole to make this thing happen. And then 87 days later, it's like it never happened. Now I went to this conference. I saw this guy on the stage, and he was talking about this really cool idea. Man, that's going to revolutionize our business, and we're going to do that. And then we're on that ship for a while, right? And again, 87 days later, it's like it never happened. Right. So in the business world, we've all experienced bosses and leaders doing that kind of thing. But also, if you go back before that, think about when you were a kid. Parents were always going to do something. Like, dad was always going to fix the boat or take you fishing, and mom was always going to go on that diet or take you to Disneyland or whatever. And oftentimes it just didn't happen. And then you get into school, and the coach is going to take some extra time and help you do this and all. My point is, I'm a firm believer when it comes to dealing with people, we are constantly balancing accountability and grace, right? Um, Extremes of either is not good. If I just give somebody grace all the time, they just walk all over me, like that's not good. But if I'm wholly just trying to hold them accountable and I have no room for grace, I think that's a recipe for disaster as well. My point with this is, and I tell my clients the same thing. They're often I help them. We're going to do new initiatives. We're going to do a different way of getting people on board and all heading in the same direction. And I tell them all the time, your consistency is their indicator of how serious they should take this, because we have a lifetime of experience of people telling us they're going to do things and then they don't. And the only way we can overcome that is consistently doing the thing we say we're going to do. And I believe that it's for my business owner clients, if they don't make it to the 90-day mark, I believe like there's something magical in that 90 to 100 days where they're my clients' employees, after about 90 days, they're like, okay, this is sticking around, and now I'm going to take it seriously because I kind of did the thing where I just kept my head down and stayed quiet, waiting for this to pass, and I just got to ride this out until the next thing comes along, and then I just got to ride that thing out. Like, I don't believe this is conscious. I don't believe it's intentional. I just think it's how it works, right? I think that would be very apples to apples for you. Like, if the husband's like, yeah, whatever, you also said you were going to do this 2 years ago, and he's like holding that over your head or whatever, okay, that's probably not fair. But also, he has a lifetime of experience of people saying they're going to do things that they don't actually ever do. I can fight that. I cannot think it's right. It's not fair and all that kind of stuff. It's also just the way it is. I can control my consistency. And I believe there is something magical about that 90 to 100-day mark. If I say I'm going to do something, if I told my wife I was going to go to the gym starting every day Monday, she'd probably walk away and go, uh-huh, yep, sure you are. Just like the last 7 times you said that, right? But on day 101 of me going, she would not have that belief anymore. So if you have people in your organization who are fighting that, I believe we can combat that with consistency and just duration. Like, we got to get past the 90. If we say we're going to make 50 calls a day, by God, we make 50 calls a day for 101 days, and then let's assess how much they're supporting us. I don't think it's fair to put all that on them. Again, they have a lifetime of people letting them down and telling them things that aren't going to happen. Like, that's just the way it is.
Okay. Wow, did you open a Pandora's box? And this is a Pandora. You did. This is a Pandora's box. And I didn't know we were going to go here, but I am going to address this. So, first, I want to say I was one of those people. My husband was raised in a family of a boatload of uncles that chased every kind of sales opportunity. And you couldn't go to a family event without them trying to sell you something or the next thing that was around the corner or whatever. He had a terrible taste in his mouth about sales. Number one. Number two, we have not gotten on the topic that we thought we were going to talk about, but that's okay because this
We
is
got time. We'll
important.
get to it.
That's important. But what I was going to say is what Brian helped me with, this is a year ago. What Brian helped me with was a realization of one of the things that drives me. And one of the things that drives me is recognition. All this time in my life, I will tell you that I always thought I was really competitive. And I am because I was raised in a competitive family. Um, but I have navigated that. I say all of that. I came into Mary Kay. I'm competitive. There are platforms that help you be competitive, so on and so forth. And then my husband's not into sales. So I Zoom eked all the time because he would not be happy. I would let it down. Then I would start again because I loved it. I just wanted him to support me. Just support me irregardless of my reputation in this situation. And it took me a really long time to realize if I want him to support me, then I do what I said I was going to do, and the results will show up. And when the results will show up, then he will appreciate what I do rather than the other way around. The issue for women is this: most women want to be loved, and most men want to be respected. Most women want to be loved, and most men want to be respected. If you're a woman who wants to be respected, and there are not many of us in the entire scope of things, and I happen to be one of those, when all is said and done, eventually, I don't care if you love me or not. I care whether or not you respect me. And when I feel like you're being disrespectful, it becomes very ugly for me. But having said that, in a business of women, and I'm talking to you all right now, Brian's no longer here. I am going to tell you what I think. When you want to be loved and you drop the ball over and over again, as long as they fill your cup to be loved, you're okay, but you cannot figure out why they don't respect you and they don't respect your business. Girlfriend, listen to me. You weren't consistent. You dropped the ball. You said one thing, you're all excited, you come home, I'm going to do Mary Kay, I'm going to make lots of money, I'm going to have lots of girlfriends. If your significant other came home and went, oh my gosh, we're going to have fun, I'm going to get to travel, we're going to get to meet people up, and they never bring any money home, you would not be happy with them at all. And yet we do it all the time. We do it all the time, and we just want them to love us, because we expect them to love us and then add the respect on. You want them to love and respect you? Get the business rolling. Do what you said at whatever level. Because you see, my reaction is whatever you are consistent at a level. You may not be consistent at 50 calls. You may not be consistent at $100 a sale a day, but you might be consistent at $10 a sale a day, an average. The consistency over 100 days will make a huge difference. We relate it to building a house. Your first 30 days, nobody can tell you did anything, because building a house, you can't tell. You'll be lucky if they poured the footers in the first 30 days and laid the plumbing. And I have a construction background, so I know exactly what that looks like. The plans have to be turned in. The next 30 days, you'll be lucky if the walls are up. And I just mean the framing. I don't mean the actual walls. I mean the framing of it. They might have brought the trusses in. You might be able to see some plumbing, and there's some chalk stuff all over the cement. You might in the next 30 days. That's 60 days out. In the last 30 to 40 days is when you go, oh, there's stucco on the walls. And look, they did the ceilings. And there's framing. And I have a sink and cabinets. Those things, for it to really look like a house, happen in the last 30, which would be the 90 to 100 days. That's when that happens. You want a business, you got to be consistent. And if this girl has learned anything, her husband respects what she does because she's been consistent. But I will tell you, I've been in this business for 40 years. It took me 20 years to really figure that out. So to Brian's point, it's true. It takes that. This is a business just like any other business. And if you want this business to work, you will work it like a business at a consistency level that fits your life, but a consistency level no less. Thanks for letting me be on the soapbox. I appreciate it.
I have a choice. Was that optional for me?
Thank you, Brian.
So since you brought up the recognition thing, let me share the other three. And the style I'm going to share it with is not the best. It's not the most sophisticated. It's the simplest, and I can teach it to a leader in an organization in 10 minutes. That's why I choose the one I'm going to share with you. Again, if you like DISC assessments, if you like Myers-Briggs, if you like predictive index, if you like that stuff, keep doing it. I'm not suggesting you stop that. Those are truthfully better, but they take longer to learn, right? So I'm going to share with you a framework that I use to help people understand themselves in the leadership capacity and understand others in a mentorship and leading capacity. There's basically four quadrants we all tend to reside in. Now, I say tend to reside in. I don't mean if you're in a particular quadrant, you have to be deep into that quadrant and you can't think anything other than what I'm going to say. I'm not suggesting that. There's all kinds of nuance and variables to things. Um, but also for anybody listening who says, when after I share what these four things are, they're like, nah, that's not me. Yeah, it is. It's all of us. uh, but it doesn't mean we have to be deep into these things. So I'm going to talk about personality drivers. And Donna mentioned her driver is recognition. My driver is I am driven by a desire to be right. Donna's driven by a desire to be recognized. Now, again, that does not mean I can't ever have a conversation with somebody where I'm not proving myself to be right. I'm human. I have all kinds of a wide variety of emotions. But the primary driver for how I do things is I want to be right. The other two categories, besides recognition and wanting to be right, is wanting to win and wanting to be liked. Now, let me just take a quick minute and I'm going to give you a super, from a leadership perspective, why I think it's important for us to understand this. I'm going to start with my quadrant. And by the way, the quadrants are developed, or it's just a simple, there's two axes. It's introvert, extrovert, and I prefer relationships or I prefer tasks and numbers. I'm an introvert. I do public speaking. I speak on stages to, I think the biggest audience I've ever spoken to is around 700 people. So again, I'm able to work outside of my little box. But when my wife goes out of town for the weekend, I close the curtains and I watch documentaries, and there's not a single other person in the house, and it's quiet, and I just get to be with me, and that's how I recharge. Donna probably does not recharge that way. Donna gets just recharged by being in a group. She's an extrovert, and I'm an introvert. Right? I think Microsoft Excel is like the greatest thing ever invented. I love numbers and like things. I have a very analytical brain, right? So that's how I'm a want to be right guy. I'm an introvert who prefers tasks. Why is it important for a leader to understand what realm they live in? I'm gonna explain by painting worst case scenarios for each of the four quadrants. So my quadrant's the easiest one to pick on. We are the tyrants. We are the my way or the highway guy. We are the when I jump, you say how high. I want you to do it how I want it, when I want it, for the reasons I want it. I want you to do it exactly how I want because I know my way is right. Okay. The problem for people who want to be right, if they don't keep that behavior in check, they become tyrants and nobody wants to work with them. And you can't have three wannabe right people trying to lead an organization. They will kill each other. So we are the easy ones to pick out because we become the tyrants. And everybody's had a boss who was a tyrant, and it was probably somebody who wanted to be right. Let's talk about I want to win. And by the way, when I'm right, that means, and I'm leading the team, if I have to be the one who's right, guess who doesn't get to be right? All the people I'm leading. Well, if they don't ever get to be right, why in the hell would they stay? They won't, is the answer, right? So let's talk about the one to win people. Win people are also more analytical. They like tasks, but they're extroverts. I worked for a guy named Howard. He was the general manager. I was the assistant general manager of this. We worked in corporate America back then. Howard really had to win. And he did this thing where he would bet dollars, like paper dollars back before Venmo and like Zelle and all that kind of stuff when everything was cash, right? He would bet dollars. He would bet on the goofiest things. Is it going to rain tomorrow? Is that service call you're going to a warranty call? What's your average ticket going to be this week? Uh, Whatever. Are the Seahawks going to win? It doesn't matter. He'd bet people dollars, and he would win fairly often. He wasn't a dummy. He was a pretty smart guy. Um, but what he would do when he would win is he would take the dollar for the person who lost, and he would write their name and date on this with a Sharpie and stick it on the corkboard behind his desk. So when you walked into his office, you see his desk and this corkboard with this array of dollar bills with people's names and dates on them. Howard was sending a message. There's no question, right? Again, Howard had to demonstrate over the top that he was a winner, and his proof was everybody else was losing. So again, the cost of what I want, the cost of what drives me is what I'm taking from the team I'm leading. Well, guess what? If you're leading a team of people and they can't ever win, why would they stay? Right? Recognition. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I'm sure you've covered this with your team. Same thing though. If the team does all the hard work and I show up just in time to get all the credit, why in the world would they keep doing that? And the answer is they won't. Again, recognition people are typically extroverts who are more relationship oriented. And then the final quadrant is they want to be liked. I'm married to a woman who wants to be liked, and that's why we get along so well. That's why we have such a great marriage, because we're completely different on this front. Well, what's wrong with wanting to be liked? How could that go bad? Um, I had an office manager in our company who was a fantastic woman. Her and her ex-husband had owned a trucking company for 20 years when they came to us. She taught me a ton of stuff. She was super smart, very driven to be liked. One of the teams she had to lead was our CSR dispatch team. They're the ones who took the calls from people and like sent the technicians out in the field. Four women in a, I think it was 16 by 22 box that they called an office, four desks, and they lived they lived with each other 45-ish hours a week. Sometimes things were a little gnarly in there, but by and large things were good. If and when one of those four people was underperforming, our office manager, because she wanted to be liked, did not like conflict. So she would dance around that problem. Well, what happened to the problem? The problem didn't go away. All she did is delegate the responsibility of dealing with the problem to the three people who were doing a good job. So her desire to be liked prevented her from being a good leader on those kinds of things intuitively. Now, again, she overcame it, and she was a great person. She was a great manager, but her desire was to avoid that stuff and essentially just delegate the burden and responsibility to the other people who were doing a good job. Like, how crazy is that, right? So my point is, it doesn't matter what quadrant we live in. Left to our own devices, if our behavior goes unchecked, bad things will happen. So I think it's really important for us, and if we're going to be in leadership, mentoring, those kinds of roles, we got to know how to keep ourselves in check first and foremost before we can go about the business of trying to lead or mentor somebody else.
I agree. So I will share from my experience after Brian evaluated me. And he did a lovely job of pretending to leave it up to me to figure out who I was. And then he just affirmed that I chose the right one. So again, he got to be right. But having said that, you're welcome. Having said that, what I will tell you guys, what I have appreciated about this knowledge right here is I began looking at some of the decisions I made, some of the things that I wanted to walk away from, some of the things that I wanted to avoid, some of the things that were shiny and I wanted to go do, some of the places that I thought, ooh, let's do that. And I'll be real. I helped with a charity. My name was the first name on it, but I helped with a charity for about 4 or 5 years. What I did not realize, and I'm just going to be real here. I also, y'all know that I was in BNI forever, so I'm just going to call it out. What I realized, having stepped away from both of those, what I realized is, in so many ways, when my business, my Mary Kay business, my Mary Kay team, my Mary Kay unit wasn't going exactly the way I wanted it to, and I was no longer being recognized as the leader, recognized in my sales, recognized in all of those areas, I would develop another platform where I could be recognized, where I could have a team of people and we worked really well together and I could be recognized. And I substituted more than once an activity or a series of activities or an organization or a group of people that filled that need. And I didn't address the shortcomings, the issues, or the workload that was needed for me to hit the goals that I had planned. And I would have been recognized because I wanted the short term recognition rather than the long term recognition. And so I will tell you guys over this last year, it is the one place that I default to when I'm making decisions. Is this decision based on what I need to do? And when I say need, that I'm going to do to hit some goals and still sustain my recognition? Or am I avoiding things so that I can find my recognition? And then I wonder why things are not working out the way they were supposed to in the other area. It has been such a revelation to me in the last, let's see, what's it been, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, what that looks like. And so my business, it has taken a while, but my business, personal business, and our unit business has begun to grow. And the reason it's begun to grow is in part, and Brian doesn't know this, because I realized in that conversation of where I was looking for recognition in other areas instead of staying focused in what I said I did, which is I am a Mary Kay consultant and a sales director with Mary Kay. And in those two avenues is where I produce and create my income and my support for my family. So, Brian, with all my heart, I thank you because I wasn't aware. And I knew I could flip to shiny and no problem. And I am gifted. It is a gift to call on people, see where they can shine and what they can do, and call on them and bring them together as a group. I can do that. I know that I can, and I do it fairly well. But when I realized what I was substituting, and I have been shifting those things out, not because they weren't a blessing, because they were, and they taught me a lot, but that is not where I want to spend my time. I want to build a business that makes a difference, and I want to build a business that helps you, and I mean my consultants, build a business that you can do that too. So this right here, even though I have done disc, and I've done strengths, and I've done, oh my gosh, guys, I've done, I don't know how many different trainings. And I think all of them are important because the more you know about yourself, the more you get to have a chance to figure some things out about yourself. But I will say this, you can't stay stuck in that stuff. Find simplicity. Brian's is a simplicity that helps me every day.
I appreciate you saying it that way. My mom used to say I was simple-minded, so I appreciate you saying it in a nicer way. So, for those of you who are not as verbose as Donna, my version of what she just said is asking myself, Brian, do you want to be successful or do you want to be right? Now, sometimes those are in the same direction, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes my desire to be right is actually taking me away from success, not towards it. Sometimes they're in the same direction. There's no question. Sometimes needing to be liked, pursuing being liked is the path to success. Sometimes it's not. And I'm going to share this. I just did a quick drawing here. This is not mine. Most of the stuff I share with people are not things. I think I've come up with like 3 things in my entire life. Everything else was taught to me by somebody else. This is a simple drawing. You can look up Alex Hormozy. He talks about this. And what this is a path we take for a business, right? We start out here, and this upward trend is called uninformed optimism. Now, you guys all recognize that because when you first heard about Mary Kay, you're like, holy crap, I'm going to go make a ton of money and I don't have to have a job anymore. And I'm going to buy boats and retirement properties and all that kind of stuff. And holy smokes, like they're just selling products. Like how hard could that be, right? Like I could do that. That's uninformed optimism. We see all the good stuff and we have no idea what the negative things are. We have no idea what the costs are. We have no idea what the commitment looks like. None of that stuff. But it sure looks pretty awesome. So we're riding the uninformed optimism. And then after probably around, I'm going to guess 45 days ish for consultants. I don't know. I'm just pulling that number out of nowhere. All of a sudden reality sets in and we go, wait a second. there's no boat waiting for me to buy. I have to like do things that are not very fun and super uncomfortable. And I have to have conversations with people, and they're gonna be thinking I'm weird and crazy and whatever. And now we have informed pessimism, and that is the downward track here. Now, what often happens when we have informed pessimism is we go, "This sucks. I don't want to do this." And some other bright, shiny thing comes along, and we can jump on the uninformed optimism train on that thing. And this is what people do over and over and over. As soon as we start getting the informed pessimism, like, oh, there's reality to this, there's things that are not very fun or comfortable or hard that I have to do. Why do I want to do that? This shiny thing over there, I could go sell insurance, and I can be an insurance broker, and I ride the uninformed optimism again, and we just do it over and over and over. Long story short, this is a long path, but it is the shortcut. The down jumping from shiny thing to shiny thing feels like the shortcut in the short term, but it's absolutely not, because you never get anywhere. You don't ever get through this valley of despair. That's his phrase, not mine. This valley of despair down here, where you start figuring it out, and then all of a sudden we start taking off again, right? That is universal as well. I went through it in my own company. Everyone who takes on a serious endeavor like this goes through a version of that.
So I just want to thank you for sharing that from both perspectives, Brian, because I would tell you that I think most of us, and I will use my business specifically, but I'll say most, we are not an MLM. So we're not a multi-level marketing company, but most people put us in that box. So I'm just going to address it from that way. Most in-home sales, people do. I watched people my entire career jump ooh to shiny, jump ooh to shiny, jump ooh to shiny, because there is euphoria in that first part. Unless you keep jumping, and eventually you have less and less people who will jump with you. They don't believe you anymore. That goes back to that consistency line that you had going on. But I love that you shared that it is not unique to those of us that are in-home businesses. It is actually true for a number of businesses. And that is one thing that I am grateful for, the networking that I was able to do for so long, because I saw it in other people's businesses. I saw it when business got hard, when you just had to grind it out. Economy, whatever the case may be, sometimes you just have to grind it out. You have to be more tenacious than whatever's going on. You just got to get up the next day and do whatever it is, knowing that you may feel like you're on a drowning ship. And sometimes it may really feel that way. But as you continue, eventually things turn around. And I have learned that over the 10-year of my business. That is true. And you can turn your ship around anytime you want to, or your business, if you're willing to go back and do the grunt work. And the grunt work is all those things. It is the phone calls. It's talking to the people you don't want to. It's asking one more person if you can borrow their face. It's being willing to ship things out, which I have done over the last 6 months, not knowing if I would make any business. It cost me an average of $10 to $15 to send out field trials to a person, not knowing whether or not they will go ahead and run even the 5 days I've given it to them, fill out the paperwork to me, and buy stuff. I don't know. All I can do is what I know to do, and do it consistently, because the money eventually shows up in the numbers of that consistency. But you do the ups and downs, and then you just, right? Even in that, even when you get to the point where it's growing, you still have ups and downs. There are a lot of other factors that play into that, but you will have a much better trajectory if you've made it through that first area.
Yeah, one thing I would add to what you said there and earlier, you were talking about I don't know, half an hour ago or something like that. You were talking about when the money comes, your husband will respect you and things like that, right? When the payoff comes. I want to supplement that with something else. Um, take the business of Mary Kay out of the equation. Why is Mary Kay Ash like why does she have this reputation that she has, Donna? Like tell me, like I'm an 18-year-old kid who's never heard of Mary Kay Ash. Why is she so admired?
Um, my perspective. of course, because you're asking me, so it would be my
Yeah.
perspective, right? I believe Mary Kay is so respected. Number one, because she really had a personal impact with her initial circle. She had such a personal impact on her personal circle, and that personal circle made it their mission in life to take what she had started to the next level. And they felt totally committed to her for that. They had their own drivers, but they were personally committed to that. Mary Kay herself did that. But through that, Mary Kay was also willing to grind it out herself. She had a background in home sales, and she took that background and she implemented it in the best way that she possibly could. And
Yeah.
so I would say
So
that
let me
is
let
why
me
she
let me
herself is.
let me rephrase the question and ask you, what do you think it was? What do you think it was like for her when she woke? Because it was like 1954. Forgive me for not having the year memorized, but it's like in the 50s, wasn't it, when she started?
60s. 1963 is
60s.
when she
Okay,
opened her doors.
1963. Okay, if I remember correctly, in many states, a woman couldn't have a credit card without her husband's permission at that time, right?
That's right.
You couldn't write checks in some places or whatever, right?
Right.
So I believe, again, taking the business of Mary Kay out of the equation for a second and just looking at the person, why she's admired is I don't think she had an easy path. I think she had a lot of headwinds, right?
She did.
Okay.
Her husband, so they set up the business, and a month before they were supposed to open their doors, her husband at the time died at the kitchen table. Died at the kitchen table. He was the money man. She was the people person. He was the money man. And that's true. They had a family discussion. And the discussion was, do we close up ship? Do we close everything down? Because she'd lost her husband. And let me tell you, I've seen a lot of people do this. She lost her husband, or do we go forward? And she took out her life savings, and her life savings was $5,000. And she turned around and invested her life savings in the company in that month to ensure they could open their doors. And her son left his company and came and worked for her. And her other son waited a little while because he was married and had kids. So the answer is it was her absolute tenacity, and she burned all her ships. I'll say it that way. She burned
Yeah.
every last ship she had. She only
Yeah.
had one path.
Okay. Now let's take somebody else. Michael Jordan. Everybody knows who Michael Jordan is. Why is Michael forget the scoring records and the seven titles or six titles, whatever. Forget all that stuff for a second. Why is Michael Jordan admired so much? I'll tell you my perspective on that again. Um, he famously was cut from the varsity basketball team in high school because he wasn't good enough, right? And also famously, he spent like the next 2 summers like shooting baskets, 8 hours a day or whatever it was, right? My point is this. You mentioned earlier one of the things that you crave and many other women crave is respect. And I believe that if you want to treat this as a business, you want that respect. I don't believe respect only comes from the outcomes. I believe much, if not most of the respect comes from the effort and the diligence and the grit and the tenacity and all that stuff to keep doing the work in spite of the fact that it hasn't paid off yet. Right. So if for those women who are saying, yeah, but my husband's not supporting me and my husband's not on board and my family's not what all that kind of stuff, again, the outcomes will come. We can't control how fast and how much all that kind of stuff. Sorry, it's just the way it works. We can influence it, but we can't control it. I can 100% control my effort and my grit and my tenacity and my diligence, not only in spite of those headwinds, but because of those headwinds, right? Um, looking at Mary Kay Ash's story, what else could have been thrown as an obstacle for her? Like what else? I mean, again, a woman in the 60s building a business, I doubt very many people, bankers or whoever took her that serious. Probably not a whole lot of that going on. Probably didn't have a whole lot of support from her family. And you know what? She just kept doing the work anyway, believing in the outcome would come eventually, but not having any like real control over that. Like you can influence it over enough repetition and time, but you can't control how fast and how much the money comes. You can 100% control the effort. So if we want to be respected and treated like this is a legitimate business, yes, we want to. We'll show off. We'll show it when the money comes and we get the outcomes we want. But the demonstrating the grit and the effort in the moment, that is where a lot of respect. The reason Michael Jordan is respected is not because he's a gifted basketball player, which he is, and that's part of it. But it's all the work he had to do to get there. Why is Mary Kay Astor respected? Yeah, she like changed countless people's lives and made a ton of money and all that good stuff. But the respect is because of the effort it took to get there. It was not handed to her. Nobody respects the Sultan of Brunei for having $1 billion. Nobody. They absolutely respect the Tony Robbins of the world, or who, pick your mentor, whatever person you look up to. They respect the people that had to go out and earn it. And so if there is part of that, like my husband's not taking me serious, my family's not supporting or whatever, we can control the effort and the diligence of doing the work with, in spite of those headwinds. And when it pays off eventually, which it will if we're consistent in all those things, that is where the respect comes from, is not the outcome. Like you don't get respect from winning a lottery and you made all this money. Like that is not where respect comes from. Respect comes from, despite all the odds against you, you said, I don't care, and I'm doing the work anyway. Every day I'm going to do my 2 hours or my 15 minutes or whatever my lifestyle will afford. I'm going to do that to the best of my ability consistently every single day. And then when the payoff comes, people will come around and be like, oh, you know what? I didn't really take you that seriously, but holy crap, I respect the crap out of you now.
Yes, the answer is yes. I will tell you, when you started, you told parts of your story that I've never heard before. And we've had one-to-ones more than once. This is the first time I heard. And one of the things that you addressed at the beginning was what your driver was. And I don't mean the fact that you have a desire to be right. I mean that you had a desire not to be poor. You had a driver that overcame. You're willing, right? You're willing to do all the other because living in that situation was not an option. If not living in this situation is not an option, then I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to this. And in that, one of the things that I have always appreciated, and I believe what makes you a great coach, is the fact that you walked the walk. So when you're telling me stuff, I trust your word because you had the experiences. I trust what you're telling me. You didn't get it out of a book. You didn't go to somebody else who told somebody else who told somebody else with a bunch of euphemisms. I know that you had the experience, and I respect the fact that you had that experience. So my long-winded answer is that is absolutely true. We have a hard time being willing to walk through the story that gives us credibility for people to come back and want to be part of the story.
Yeah. Well, we make decisions emotionally, and then we support those decisions with logic after the fact, and that is not always a benefit. it's not always That is not always helpful. One of the things you can do, I'm not sure how we're doing on time, so just in case we're running short on time, I want to say this. One of the things you can do in this valley of despair down here, when you're in the informed pessimism, you're like, oh my God, this stuff sucks. I don't want to have to make phone calls today, and people are going to think I'm whatever, and they're not going to be excited to hear about my opportunity I'm going to offer, whatever that is, right? Again, I'm a firm believer in balancing accountability and grace. Now, the scales tend to be tilted more towards the accountability side when we're talking about somebody else, and it tends to be tilted toward the grace side when we're talking about ourselves, right? That's not an accusation and a criticism. It's just an observation. And by the way, I'm speaking about myself first and foremost on that. I think one of the things we do is we tend to hold other people accountable to the standard of outcomes. Like, hey, if I'm the boss of the company, like, hey, I wanted you to finish up this job before you went home, and you didn't. And the employee is like, yeah, but I had a whole bunch of this or that happen, and my response as the boss might be, I don't, I don't really care what else was going on. I told you what I wanted. The outcome I wanted was the job to be done before you went home on Thursday. And that's a standard I apply to other people, is the outcome. But for me, when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, and then all of a sudden I don't finish it when I told myself I was going to. The story is, Well, I was going to, but something else came up, but I meant to. And so the standard I hold myself to is my intent. The standard I hold other people to is outcome. So and I think that's a kind of a general way things work for human beings, because we are human, despite our desire not to be sometimes. In this valley of despair here, one of the things we can do that helped me. I used to have to make cold sales calls. I would have to walk into places and knock on the door and say, "Hey, we have a plumbing company," and again, I'm an introvert. I'm not a relationship. I am the furthest thing from a gifted salesperson you will find. That is not my wheelhouse at all. But we had employees and we had mortgages and we had car payments and we had life to pay for. And I didn't have the luxury of saying, I don't feel like doing that today. Despite my fervent desire not to have to do that, 3 days a week, I would park my car downtown Seattle, downtown Tacoma, downtown Bellevue, and I would walk up and down the streets, knocking on doors, telling people about our plumbing company. And it was horrendous for me because that's not. I would rather be doing just about anything else in the world except for that. But we had bills to pay and we had employees to take care of. One of the things that helped me in this part down here, this valley of despair, was asking myself this question. Okay, yeah, I know you don't want to do this, Brian. Got it. Noted. Thank you for your input on that. If you were to hire somebody to do this job that you're supposedly doing right now, what standard would you hold them to? And that reframes the grace and accountability scale to now it's not about me and yeah, but I'm special and yeah, but I shouldn't have to do this and this is unfair and life sucks and like all that stuff goes away because when I'm assessing somebody else, I tend to care more about the outcomes than their intent. So if I tell myself that to build my Mary Kay business, I need to make 50 phone calls a day, and I find myself doing that, 20% of the time or whatever. If I ask myself, if I paid somebody to do this for me, what standard would I hold them to? And if I'm not willing to hold myself to the same standard as I would hold somebody else, now I got a real problem. And the problem could be, I don't know what success looks like. I don't know why this matters. Like I don't know what my why is, or I don't know how to do it. I don't know. I haven't crafted the words. I haven't practiced the words and crafted them, so it's natural and things like that. I'm fumbling my way through it. Whatever it is, there might be some kind of app or tool I haven't invested in learning. It could be I don't believe I think I can. I just don't. I don't think I'm able to do this. And it could be I don't think it's reasonable. I should have to. Um, all those things could be the obstacle. But if I said I'm going to hire somebody to do this job, I'm not going to give them a pass on that stuff the same way I'm going to give myself a pass. So if we're having a hard time with that consistency and holding ourselves accountable, try that. It's worked for me. Again, I did not want to go out and knock on doors and introduce myself to strangers and tell them about my plumbing company and have them do all the things that people do to salespeople when they knock on doors. um, but I didn't have a choice. For me, some of these things, again, I wasn't born being a good leader. I didn't have a choice. I was an employee. I didn't own the company. I had to do what my boss told me, or I was out of a job. I didn't have a choice there. When I was out making those cold sales calls, I didn't have a choice. Um, so what do we have to do to make it so I don't have a choice to do this? Again, it could be for some people it's about vision. For some people it's about more time blocking, having an accountability partner, whatever. There's always a solution if we're committed to it. But the framing of what standard would I hold an employee to doing this for me kind of takes that element out of the equation to a degree of like, yeah, but I'm special and I shouldn't have to do this.
So, first of all, I'm going to show y'all. These are the notes that I had taken since Brian has shared with me. Number one. Number two, what he finished with is something that I will be posting because my guess is that was one of three things he came up for himself. He didn't steal from somebody else. And you know what? Let's be real. I don't care what self-help book you have or what business book you have or whatever. There are principles that are just principles no matter who you are and what you're about. They just somebody says it differently and so you latch on to that and that's yours. Let's be, as y'all know, when he asked who was the perfect, wasn't the word he used, but who was born as a leader, and stayed as a leader, there's only one person that was perfect, and there's only one person that was the perfect leader. And I am grateful that he lives in my life because he does. And I don't have any problem telling you it's Jesus, just in case you were confused. But having said that, this last piece, Brian has once again, and I have notes here, guys, and there are things because he just stepped all over my toes, and most of you know I'm missing a couple of them. So there you go. Because he knows that one of the things that absolutely transformed my business was 50 reach outs a day, 50 calls, emails, texts, whatever the case may be, but I was making those. And I have been persuading myself that I didn't have to do quite that many every day or within a number of days. I have let myself off the hook. And what he has reminded me is if somebody was hired by me, I would expect them to hit that number. I don't care what their excuse is, I'm paying you. And sometimes you need to hire yourself as an employee and think of yourself as the employee because you will expect more from the employee than you will from yourself. So thank you, Brian. That one is at the
On
top of
that
my.
picture I was telling you about, this is me at 11 years old. Again, this is that's how we grew up. That's how I grew up in a single white trailer in the middle of Wyoming, and that's my mom's car. And I keep this picture in my office over there, so I can remind myself I don't have the luxury of waiting for somebody else to figure it out for me.
So, Brian, we are going to wrap this up, but I have quite a couple of questions, so don't ditch on me. But I would appreciate you have the opportunity because we have done this. If you would like to share your information, or I'll gladly post it for my people so they can take a look at it. I will tell you guys is what Brian actually works with companies that have a set number of employees, and he knows his company. I mean, he knows his business. He knows who to say yes to and who to say no to. And he has graciously allowed his expertise to be in my life, even though I don't have employees. And he has shared his wisdom and his knowledge and his passion with you guys today. But what I will say is many of you know people who he would be perfect for. And if you do, I'm going to say to you, run to those people and say, this is Brian Harding, and I heard him speak, and this is what I heard him share, and he would be the coach for you. So, Brian, would you share your information so that they can do that if they would like to?
Yeah, you could read my cell number is 253-255-9204. My email address is Brian, Brian, at successful-concepts.com. I typically work with service-based companies. I don't work with product-based companies like restaurants and stuff like retail. I don't know how those businesses work. I do really well with service companies, home services, obviously like the trades, plumbing, electrical, roofing, that kind of stuff, but also white collar versions would be accounting or bookkeeping, IT services, marketing. So those kind of service businesses are who I'm a good fit for. Typically, they're going to have at least 8 employees, and they're going to say one of these three things. They're either going to say, I can't get my employees to do the right thing when nobody's there. They're going to say, I have a great leadership. The people in my leadership team are good people, but they're disjointed. They're not cohesive. Um, we're not proactive. I can't delegate decisions to them. I can only delegate tasks to them. So they're going to say that, or they're going to say now more than a couple years ago, um, the phone's not ringing enough, and we need more customers. And those are the three primary things I help with. Again, service-based businesses is my strength.
Well, I will tell you that I'm in a service-based business, not the ones that you mentioned, but I would say to all of my consultants, whether you realize it or not, you're in a service base. Guys, we provide a service, and that service is to share the product. You would look at it and say, I sell lipstick. And I would say to you, you're in the service of helping women feel better about themselves. You're in the service of meeting with them, coaching them, and helping them develop skills and a skincare routine that makes a difference for them long term. We are actually in a service business. And from there, you're in a service of being able to share this opportunity with women and give them the chance to take a look and decide whether or not they want to be in euphoria, whether or not they're going to stay down in the dumps, or whether they're willing to continue to build because their background and their drivers insist to them that they are not going to stay where they were, but they're going to move forward and do something different. Brian, with all my heart, I thank you for today. Oh my gosh. And I should have known, because when Brian and I get together, I budgeted 30 minutes and we have been here for over an hour. That is a go give. So ladies, I will also be posting an address where you can send him a thank you, because we owe him a thank you. I'm going to stop recording here. You all have an amazing day. Remember, blessings are chasing you down. This is the day the Lord hath made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it.